electric railway systems, which actually went all through New England. That was all torn up and destroyed. The federal government moved in under the pretext of defense to build a national highway system. The pretext was you had to move missiles around from one place to another. Okay, so there were massive public funds spent in these and other ways to shift to the most inefficient, wasteful, and destructive form of transportation.
We're not going to stop driving our cars. We're not going to stop flying our airplanes. We're not going to stop doing any of that. But we do have to figure out a way, and this is one of the best we've come up with, another way of burning, of using, of creating fuel. We've got to do it this way, you know?
Yeah. My whole purpose in doing all this is just to kind of advance the choice. Let people know there are alternatives. Whether you want to burn grease or soy-based biodiesel, ethanol, you can buy a hybrid. There's ways for everybody out there to do something different.
We are proposing to build a 30 million gallon per year biodiesel plant. We're going to place it it's going to be here in the Mississippi Delta, either in Clarksdale or Marks, Mississippi. We'll probably employ about 12 to 15 full-time employees at the plant. But as I said a minute ago, the supply chain to get everything there and get everything out of there probably triples or quadruples the number of jobs this will help create.
I have this big problem with what we're doing in order to continue this. Our present administration is talking about going into our pristine wilderness up in Alaska and started hunting for oil in order to offset that. But I think we can beat that.
40% of our energy in this country comes from petroleum, and 98% of our transportation energy comes from petroleum. So we really are highly addicted to this substance, and the world is going to run out of it.
And there's people that I hear all the time, well, this can't replace all the diesel fuel we burn. This is ridiculous. We've got to go into hydrogen fuel cells, almost like it's a waste of time. And I'm like, we're doing it right here, right now. That vehicle, my big evil SUV, gets cleaner emissions than a Toyota hybrid. And how can that be bad?
As far as vegetable oil as a fuel, I have a hard time being skeptical about it, because I think compared to what we're doing now, which, sucking stuff out of the ground, turning it into fuel that we can burn to drive things, and we can't make more of it, and why not grow something and run a vehicle on it? That way you can control the source.
Well, we're at the stage now, and a lot of people say, oh, well, all the waste vegetable oil is going to be used up in a few years. Hit these little mom-and-pop restaurants and grocery stores that aren't even recycling at this point and go there. And so we've got several billion gallons to soak up in those areas alone.
In this part of the country, restaurants pay to get rid of it. Anywhere between $30 and $60 a month they pay to get rid of it. So if you can take it away for free, they're happy to give it to you. It's a waste product. You're taking a waste product that's otherwise going to go into cosmetics, cattle food, landfills for the most part, and using it as a fuel. Here, for instance, I have access to more waste vegetable oil than I would have any idea what to do. I could fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool every day. There is more oil available than anyone is doing anything with, and that's free. I'm not talking about purchasing it from anywhere. I'm talking about waste vegetable oil.
The bottom line with any fuel that goes into any vehicle anywhere is it's got to meet a certain spec, and you just can't get that out of grease. No large entity, no government entity, nobody recognizes grease as a legitimate fuel because you can't standardize it. Grease from one restaurant is going to be different from another restaurant, and grease from one restaurant this week is going to be different from grease at the same restaurant the next week. And in the alternative fuels business, the real legitimized alternative fuels business, there's networks and there's partnerships, and people are going at it as a unit. There's a national biodiesel board, there's a national ethanol vehicle coalition, And there's these national groups that are trying to create corridors where you can expect to fuel up. There's not a cohesive network of people doing it right now, and that's what's missing.
First thing is welcome to the world of being a pioneer. If you're going to drive across the country on vegetable oil when almost no one is doing it, then you're going to face difficulties doing so.
But the more that people are learning about it and hearing about it and seeing it in use, it's just making it grow and grow. And I think the environment is totally set to allow something like this to take off.
We have an economy right now that is focused on exponential growth, and we don't have a fuel source, one that can keep that exponential growth up or that's clean enough to allow us to survive. So I think really there has to be a paradigm shift in our economy, in our everyday life. We have to think a little more sustainably.
Suburbs are so car dependent. As we sprawl away from the cities, we gobble up farmland and open space, and then people have to drive.
I mean, a lot of advantages to suburban life. Like, I live in the suburbs, and I like it. On the other hand, I'd like it much better if they had a subway running out to this western suburb where I live. If they did, I could get into work in 10 minutes instead of fighting traffic for an hour. But the citizens of the town where I live wouldn't allow the subway to go out there. They'd rather spend 2 hours a day fighting traffic than face the risk of a black kid from Dorchester walking around Lexington Center. But those patterns have to be reversed, and this just indicates that an awful lot is involved. Social policy, state policy, racism, cultural practices. I mean, it's quite a mixture.
I sit in traffic every day for an hour. It takes me an hour to commute 5.2 miles to work. An hour, 5.2 miles. As I'm sitting in traffic alone in my car, I'm looking at all the other people sitting alone in their cars. If I were to take a bus, it would take me 2 hours and 40 minutes to get to work, 2 hours and 40 minutes to get home. You work very hard so that you can live in a piece of real estate that's hideously overpriced and work, 2 people 5 days a week to be able to maintain a household that you probably owe a lot on and drive a car that you owe a lot on. People are overloaded, overstressed. We just don't have an infrastructure that's designed to allow people not to have their own cars at this point. And until it becomes so hideously expensive, or we're forced to commit such heinous political acts to continue to supply oil, I don't think that people are going to really do anything about it.
You know what's going to happen in New Orleans, for instance? New Orleans is an ideal place now for corporations to go in there and build huge high-rises. They make tons of money. That's how the world is running. To survive in that world, you have to open your eyes about that, So to some of us, it looks like that New Orleans was a very sort of important turning point to start thinking about making a better world for all of us. To most of them, it's an incredible opportunity, again, to make money.
What are they gaining? What, more yachts? More palaces?
Katrina was a very decisive effect in all of this. Aside from the tragedy of New Orleans itself, Katrina showed how insane and suicidal this policy of relying on petroleum is.
Well, all of this interacts. You know, you live in a suburb, got to have 2 cars, you know. You got to go to the supermarket, urban life is destroyed, and so on. After the cities were destroyed, then comes the reverse process. You get the rich people back into the cities, and you sort of drive out the poor people who remained off somewhere or other. These are all social policies. They weren't the result of consumer choice, but it's basically massive social engineering policies, which have had an enormous effect on every aspect of life. And yes, those have to be reversed.
If you look at the money that you're spending at a gas station pump, the $2 a gallon you're paying at the pump isn't the only cost of your gasoline. There's health effects. Insurance is higher because people get sick because they're breathing in emissions from, you know, gasoline-powered vehicles. We're paying for a war that's, no small amount is about oil. Maybe a little bit of time spent sweating, pumping grease isn't that big a deal.
The most conservative of them with regard to peak oil up until now has been ExxonMobil. They predict that non-OPEC oil will peak in about a decade. That will require much higher production of OPEC oil. That means primarily the Middle East. I don't have access to their figures, so I don't know if it's true, but let's say it's true. That would mean far greater U.S. involvement in the Middle East, more wars, more terror, more violence, maybe nuclear wars, all sorts of things.
I was in Dubai last year. Sheikh Mohammed, the titular head of the state, has said within 40 years their economy will no longer be able to sustain itself on oil. Right. 40 years. For you and I, it seems like a long time, but it's a blink of an eye.
You guys are stuck in the alternative. The oil companies are monsters. They kill you. They'll kill you and everybody else. I mean, if you don't understand Exxon and Mobil and Chevron, what they do with global warming, absolute denial, absolute lies, cheating, stealing, murder. They were talking about billions of dollars, right? They're ready to go to war with Mr. Cheney and kill as many people as possible to control oil. So you guys got vegetable in the tank, and you're gonna drive your car. Good luck. Good. That'd be nice. And see if you can sell it anywhere. And if you get too big, you'll get smashed. It's America.